Welcome in. This guy right here was back out on the practice field today, the 49ers practice field. He wasn't practicing, no. Brandon Aiyuk has yet to re-sign with the 49ers, if that's what the ultimate conclusion of all this is going to be. But for the first time in 2 weeks, we did see Brandon Aiyuk on the 49ers practice field. Now, I'm going to go through a timeline because I think that a lot of you have decided that no, I don't want to pay attention to every single twist and turn. As I said, this Brandon Aiyuk situation has had more twists and turns than Lombard Street. Or for those of you in the 559, it's had more twists and turns than the windy road up to Camp Nelson or the windy road up to Shaver Lake. It has been an ordeal, that's for sure. So, because of that, a lot of people have tuned out, and I get it. You want actual hard news updates. And because of that, I've tried to give you only the substantive stuff. But I get it. Anytime you log in, you'll see a whole lot of other noise, and you want to avoid that. So, with respect to the people who have wanted to avoid the garbage over the course of the past 2 weeks, I've been able to create a timeline of what's important, what you've needed to know from the past 2 weeks in the Brandon Aiyuk situation. And this is your Aiyuk timeline. We can go over it right now and have it all summarized for you. This is something that can save you a lot of grief. So you don't have to go back through all the confusing twists and turns of the past few weeks. So breaking through the noise, 2 weeks ago on Wednesday was Handshake Hug Day. That essentially got this entire roller coaster rolling. That was the day that Brandon Aiyuk, wearing black, I believe, on the day, he was not wearing red like he was today, comes onto the practice field, shakes John Lynch's hand, and hugs Kyle Shanahan. That was July 31st, 2 weeks ago. That led to a whole slew of false reports, premature reporting that Brandon Aiyuk was about to re-sign with the 49ers. In retrospect, that's obviously laughable because the next 2 weeks did not include Brandon Aiyuk re-signing with the 49ers. You could see how quickly this made a 180. On July 31st, Brandon Aiyuk had the whole hug, handshake seen around the world. That was a Wednesday. By August 5th, which was a Monday, there were verified reports that the 49ers were open to a trade because contract negotiations weren't going well. So that sure made the reports coming out of July 31st look really stupid. Kyle Shanahan, later this week of August 5th, indicated that the 49ers had been open to a trade for at least a few days before August 5th. So it turns out that the 49ers were probably open for the trade around the time of the actual handshake and hug, making those initial reports even worse based on what Kyle Shanahan said. So the trade talk heats up. We start to learn of the potential suitors. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the Washington Commanders, the New England Patriots, and the Cleveland Browns are the 4 teams that are most often listed in credible reports. On August 7th, 2 days after the 49ers' openness to a trade was put out there by verifiable and reliable sources reported that Brandon Aiyuk had rejected proposals from the Pats and the Browns. In that time, the Steelers ducked out of contention and then came back into contention when they upped their offer with the 49ers. So by August 7th, which is last Wednesday, a week ago, in this 2-week saga, New England and Cleveland were out of the running. Then 2 days after that, at this point, I was in Nashville. I flew to Nashville on the night of August 8th. So by the the evening of August 9th, there was a report of at least a slight Aiyuk 49ers reapproachment, meaning that the 49ers were willing to sit back down at the table with Brandon Aiyuk and discuss how they can move forward for a potential re-signing. This wasn't something that would guarantee a re-signing. It wasn't something that took the trade request and the trade possibility off the table, but it was a move back toward Aiyuk staying with the 49ers on a long-term deal. That is where we have lived since August 9th. On August 13th, which was yesterday, Jerry Rice posted on Instagram. And I'll tell you what, when Jerry Rice speaks or when Jerry Rice posts, you have to listen. And Jerry Rice made it sound like he had some inside information last night. He said, okay, sounds like we're going to find out tomorrow about Brandon Aiyuk. Well, and that combined with the Mike Garofalo report that the 49ers and Aiyuk were getting closer, that meant that everybody was sitting on pins and needles today. Well, Brandon Aiyuk has not re-signed as of yet. The day's not over, even though Jerry Rice said that we might find out tomorrow. But as you can see here, August 14th, today, Brandon Aiyuk was back out on the practice field for the first time since the start of this timeline, since July 31st. So I just went over that in about 4 minutes. Hopefully it saved you some time. Hopefully it saved you about 2 weeks of time. I envy you if you didn't have to sit through the past 2 weeks where it's been fake report, rumor, half report. You know, there's been some legitimate stuff thrown in there. I get it, but there's been a whole lot of fake stuff thrown in there. The bottom line is that we are in the same exact spot that we were 2 weeks ago, though. Brandon Aiyuk is still on the 49ers. The 49ers still hold the leverage. The best possible outcome for both parties is probably Brandon Aiyuk re-signing with the 49ers. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen. But, I talked about game theory. I talked about prisoner's dilemma throughout all of this. The way to solve the prisoner's dilemma is to improve communication between the two parties. And if you hit Nash equilibrium, that is an optimal outcome for both parties in the negotiation. That's what the 49ers want to hit. Nash equilibrium, prisoner's dilemma, game theory, whichever way you want to cut this, you can go watch A Beautiful Mind. That's John Nash who came up with this. And you will understand that this negotiation is facing a similar set of challenges as a lot of negotiations that we've seen in the history of humanity. So the 49ers hope to reach the conclusion of it with Brandon Aiyuk sooner rather than later. And I think everybody hopes that the optimal decision value-wise is reached by both sides. Everybody that's involved with the 49ers, I'm sure, wants that. I know a lot of 49ers fans watch the show, so I'm sure you want that. I'm just sitting here neutrally observing a fascinating business dynamic. And it's not just Brandon Aiyuk that is something that needs to be talked about. We need to talk about the rest of the 49ers roster. So I want to do an entire 49ers roster breakdown. Before we move to that, though, this article is in the description. I was at 49ers practice today, and I wrote this about Brandon Aiyuk, and it's a full-on practice report. I know I was at Stanford a little bit earlier. I gave you the sandwich of the day, which was Fambrini's, which was really good. We'll probably include that in this show as well. But the sandwich of the day was part of a longer process of breaking down practice, which is in a different video. And we could go through all the intel again, but first I want to go through the entire roster, and I want to encourage you to sub to The Athletic through the article that is in the description. So that's where it is. You can go ahead and check it out. And then we can move to talking about Dominic Puni. This is from the 49ers right here. Brick by Brick is the show. This is a little preview they posted on social media, so we can post it here. This is Fred Warner talking about the 49ers rookie right guard. Check this out.
Let's go now. All right, Roy. Hey, you know who can move kind of good is the rookie 77, Puni. He can move good, bro. Like they ran bounds or toss over that way, and I'm trying to run past him, and he was hanging with me. I had to punch and get off him. I mean, he got good size to him. He can move. Obviously, he's young, so like he only gonna get stronger.
I mean, this should be making the 49ers ears sing, because Dominic Puni, the book on him had been that he was a better pass protector than a run blocker coming out of college. And I still think that's the case. In the preseason opener, he had 14 pass blocking reps and didn't give up a single pressure. He was solid as hell on the anchor. It looked like the anchor was very strong. Keep in mind that Tennessee was running a lot of first teamers against Dominic Puni when he was in the game, and he held up just fine in pass protection at right guard. I've mentioned the big stat many, many times. He didn't give up a single sack over 2 years at Kansas. Chris Foerster came out in the first week of training camp, the 49ers O-line coach, and straight up said that Puni is a better pass protector than run blocker at this stage in his development, which is unusual for the 49ers because they've prioritized run blocking over pass protection over the years under Kyle Shanahan. Normally, they'd gone and drafted guys that were better run blockers. This goes back to Mike McGlinchey, a first-round pick in 2018. Elite run blocker, definitely not an elite pass blocker. You could even argue that he was down near the bottom of the league in terms of pass blocking for the tackle position. Somebody like Aaron Banks, you know what they really, really value from Aaron Banks is how damn quick he is, how quickly he can get to the second level off the ball. That's a run blocking trait. It's definitely more of a run blocking trait than it is a pass blocking trait. So the two drafted 49ers offensive linemen in the very upper rounds prior to Dominic Puni, 49ers valued the run blocking over the pass blocking. Well, something changed with Dominic Puni when they decided to go get a guy that was a better pass blocker than run blocker. So what you heard there from Fred Warner, how quickly he was moving on a toss play, that's great for the 49ers because here you have all-pro players, Warner talking to Nick Bosa, complimenting Dominic Puni for what was purportedly the weakness in his game or something that was behind his pass blocking. If Puni can move and he can run block, and we saw him pull blocking on the Jordan Mason touchdown and then chasing down the play, which was another good sign about his movement capabilities. If Puni can do that, well, then you've completed both halves of the game, right? He's a good pass blocker, and obviously there's probably going to be growing pains still yet to come at the NFL level there, but he's already made a great jump from D2 Central Missouri to Kansas. He's shown in the pass blocking department that he could probably hang, and we'll have to, well, of course, we have to see more there, but the early returns there are very promising. If he can also show it in the run blocking department, and you heard there from Fred Warner that he's impressed early on with Dominic Puni, this guy can be a real player for the 49ers. The Brick by Brick series is also cool because it gives you a little behind the scenes of guys talking. Dominic Puni is from St. Louis, Missouri. Let's hear from him in Brick by Brick.
Yeah. California and Missouri, definitely two different places. My favorite thing about Cali, besides the 49ers, is the weather. I was telling my family, I was like, when you guys come down for a game, you're going to be like, this is crazy. Because in Missouri right now, I was telling them it's like 100 degrees, and it's like humid. I've only been here for like a month for a rookie minicamp, so I mean, it's a different lifestyle. I'm still kind of getting used to it. I got to find a place to live. And I mean, I just miss playing football, so I'm excited to get back to it and just first training camp. So like, why wouldn't I be excited? Like, it's a new journey. My goals are to just go in every day and attack it. Like, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. I mean, to not give my all every day is going to be it'd be a waste of time. So that's my mindset going in. I'm going to attack every day like it's my last. So I'm excited for the competition.
I had a chance to meet Dominic Puni's parents recently. Really, really nice family, humble. And this goes back to when I wrote about him following the draft. I called up Lance Leipold, who was Kansas's head coach. And the first thing that Lance told me was, I still remember Dominic Puni's first recruiting visit to Kansas because he transferred from Central Missouri. And he said that he just remembers Puni and he remembers his dad just being these two big, humble, soft-spoken guys on campus. A lot of times in the college recruiting game these days, you get entitled players, entitled parents coming on the campus demanding, okay, what are you going to do to get my kid to the NFL? It's just putting the cart in front of the horse, that type of instant gratification mentality. And it could be tiresome for these college coaches. So the one thing that Lance Leipold noticed at Kansas about Dominic Puni and his dad when they came on the recruiting visit was that, this guy was not demanding what Kansas was going to do to put him into the NFL. There was a mentality of, okay, we're thankful to be here, thankful for the opportunity. And we realize that Dominic is going to have to put in the work to make it to the NFL. The difference between instant gratification entitlement and really just that blue collar understanding that the actual work that you put in is what's going to take you to the goal. Other people, other entities aren't going to do the work for you. And that's the kind of mentality you have to succeed in the NFL. So the fact that Lance Leipold told that to me about Dominic Puni coming from Central Missouri to Kansas, that was his first impression, not only of him, but of his family. I thought that was really telling. And the 49ers do their background on all these guys, right? Especially if you're going to use a valuable draft pick on him. And the 49ers used that third rounder on Dominic Puni. They wanted to make sure they had somebody that was made out of the right stuff. You just heard Dominic Puni talk. I think that it's safe to say that he's a guy that carries himself really well. And so far, we've seen that in training camp from Dominic Puni. He has not looked like a rookie. The first thing that I thought about him back when he was at OTAs was this guy's not built like a rookie. They're not going to have to rework his body in the weight room for a year or two. And, there's nothing wrong with Nick Zakelj and him having to develop over the course of the past couple of years. That's something that we absolutely expected when the 49ers drafted Zakelj in the 6th round out of Fordham in 2022. He's Brock Purdy's roommate there for a couple of years. But I'm going to use this to compare and contrast Puni with Nick Zakelj, who was a lower draft pick. I talked to Zakel's college coach, and he mentioned that when Zakelj was coming out of high school, he was extremely raw. And Fordham was like, oh boy, this is going to take a little bit for this guy to develop. And he did develop. And Zakelj started playing football a little bit late too. So when he first started playing in high school, he was really raw. So at every single stage of football, Nick Zakelj was extremely raw, and it took him some time to figure it out and start starring at that stage. So we expected that the same dynamic would probably apply when he jumped from college at Fordham, smaller school, to the NFL level. And that was true. Nick Zakelj's been developing behind the scenes for 2 years, but guess who looked really good in the 49ers preseason opener against the Titans, starting at the center position? Nick Zakelj. So that looks to be paying off for the 49ers. With somebody like Dominic Puni, this was a higher investment in the draft, a 3rd-round pick instead of a 6th-round pick. It's somebody that did it very, very solidly at a major D1 FBS school for 2 years, and Puni didn't give up a single sack for Kansas. And when I first saw him at OTAs, I was like, this guy is built like a brick. Like, this guy can play right away. There's not going to have to be a reworking of the body. There's not going to have to be a year or two of development for Dominic Puni to be a factor right away. Those of you who watched this show back during OTAs, I said that multiple times. When I got to meet Dominic Puni and shake his hand for the first time, I'm like, okay, this guy is not reminding me of other rookie offensive linemen. That includes Aaron Banks, a 2nd-round pick who had to rework his body. Aaron Banks played 6 snaps as a rookie in 2021, even as a 2nd-round pick. The 2 guys physically who have impressed me most as rookies that the 49ers have drafted have been Spencer Burford. That was 2022 as well for the 49ers, and Dominic Puni. Guess who started as a rookie? Spencer Burford in 2022, and now Dominic Puni is in line, I think, to start as a rookie in 2024. So really, really impressive stuff. We're getting to see more into the backstory, into the personality of these guys. I'm honored to be able to share it with you. And now I'm honored to be able to head into a bigger roster breakdown with you. If you want to follow along with this roster breakdown, I'm going to copy and paste the link to it and put it into the comment section, because I think in the comment section, you might be able to actually click on it. There you go. It is in the comment section. That's the link. I don't think you could click on it in the screen, but if I remember, for those of you watching later on, I'll be able to take this and put it into the pinned comment section. So go ahead and check that out. This is the 49ers roster breakdown. Why don't we have some fun with this? We can go position by position. We can take some questions along the way. I think I'll check the chat section every here or there, but we'll go for it. By the way, The Athletic, there's a big piece I have coming out tomorrow. I'm not going to divulge what it is yet. I traveled for this piece. I had to suffer through some flight delays for this piece, but I made it out to where I needed to be. I grabbed a lot of good information. If you want to guess what this piece is about, go ahead and guess in the chat section or the comment section. I'm not sure if I'll indulge your guess. I'm not sure if I'll tell you if it's right or wrong, but I do want to hear people speculating about this. That's dropping tomorrow morning. It's a good 3,000 words. It's an early treat for you. Coming out a little bit sooner than we expected, but an early treat for you. Some new 49ers info. It's going to be dropping tomorrow. I've worked really hard on this, so be ready for it. One hint that it's about one of these 90 guys on the depth chart. So go ahead and guess away in the comments section, and we will go from there. All right, where are we going to start? Talanoa Hufanga, it's a big day for him tomorrow. He's meeting with doctors tomorrow at the safety position. If Talanoa sees his appointment with doctors go well tomorrow, he might be back at practice shortly. I'm sure they're going to work him in gradually. I don't think it's going to be, full go first day. But we still have more than 3 weeks before we watch the 49ers take the field for the season opener. And remember that Talanoa Hufanga's goal back in June was not to be ready for the start of training camp, but to be ready for week 1. If he's back at practice by next week, being ready for week 1 is still very, very realistic. So we'll keep you updated on how Talanoa Hufanga's appointment goes as soon as we're able to figure out how it did go tomorrow. That is something to keep an eye on. Time being, Jair Brown has been starting at that safety position alongside George Odom. And we know that Malik Mustafa is impressing the 49ers just with his natural hitting ability. I will repeat this about Malik. His pre-play directing of traffic during that drive that ended up with his 4th down stop was more impressive than the 4th down stop. And the 4th down stop was a great play. But when I see a rookie have enough command of the defense to be directing traffic, pointing guys around in his first NFL game, I'm like, that's a guy who's been studying his playbook. That's a guy who's football smart. And the particular play that I'm referring to is when he was making sure Renardo Green had the right alignment before a play. But to me, Mustafa's a natural. I think Brandon Staley in particular is going to love him. And I played some video from Brandon Staley about it yesterday because I think Staley is going to be trying to bring some new schematic wrinkles to the back end. A guy like Malik Mustafa, who can play multiple different roles, who's done it before at Wake Forest, who showed that versatility. I mean, he wasn't playing different positions against the Titans, but on one play, he did multiple different things. He showed off his knowledge of the game from a deep safety position in the red zone. He was backed up against the end line, right, against Tennessee. He showed his burst when he was the one to make the tackle in the backfield on the run left, even though he was lined up further away than anybody else. So he had to close a lot of ground quickly. He showed his muscle. Whenever you're going into the backfield, you can't just be this frail figure. You're having to fight through big blockers. You're also having to take on a big running back in a goal line situation, and you have to push that running back backwards. You can't let him bowl over you. So he showed off his mini linebacker build on that play. So he showed off recognition, he showed off burst, he showed off speed, and he showed off muscle. And then he showed off tackling ability. Showed off 5 things in one play. So what Malik Mustafa showed in just one play in that game, plus the command of the playbook that I saw earlier in that drive, what we saw, to me, when you look at this roster, you say, hey, the 49ers have a guy who's going to be able to contribute at some point this year. Maybe not right away, because there's a difference between doing this against the first team than the second team in the preseason. I get it. I mean, you've got to lower the liability on the back end because first-team offenses and NFL star quarterbacks are going to prey on rookies, and one bad play can cost you an NFL game. So you've got to make sure that the floor is as high as possible before Malik Mustafa is thrust into action. But Talanoa Hufanga was able to come into the league as a third safety for the 49ers, and I think Malik is in a really, really similar kind of role. Jalen Mahoney, saw an interception from him today. Brandon Allen threw it. Mahoney, the Vanderbilt product. Shout out to him, his first NFL practice interception today. 49ers are a little beaten up at cornerback with Isaac Yiadom out right now with the ankle. They expect him back next week. The interim has given Renardo Green some shine. Renardo is a fascinating player to me because they're treating him like Diamond Lenore as far as being able to play inside and being able to play outside. I think it was Charvarius Ward that was talking about it. Maybe Mike can get us the clip from Charvarius Ward's press conference. Mike, if you're there, don't worry about it if you can't do this. But if you can find it, and I think it was fairly early on when Mooney was speaking today, he was talking about how hard it is to play inside and outside like Demo does. And they're talking about Renardo. You're dealing with much bigger bodies on the inside. In the run game especially, you're dealing with pulling guards. You're having to throw your hat in there and make a lot of stops. It takes a badass to play nickelback at an adequate level, especially in this defense. It takes a real badass to be able to do that. And then to be able to do that and also play on the outside, well, you've got to be a versatile badass. I think the 49ers definitely have that in Deommodore Lenoir. And I think that they think they're going to have it in Renardo Green. Now, whether they do have it and whether they think they have it, those are two different things. But when we do look at this roster right now for the 49ers, Renardo at this position with Isaac Yiadom out has gotten quite a bit of run over the course of the past several days. And I think that is significant. Darrell Luter Jr. had a nice pass breakup today. He's been a little banged up, and I know he's banged up throughout all of training camp last year because he got hurt in OTAs his rookie year with the bone bruise in his knee. Luter's got a good-looking frame for this cornerback job. I mean, a really, really good-looking frame. And some of the competition right here for at least the short term is not going to be available in terms of Ambry Thomas. What does that leave us with Samuel Womack? Well, I don't know if more injuries are going to happen for the 49ers, but in the case of this secondary, they are overflowing with talent right now. And as unfortunate as the injury to Ambry Thomas was, it does clear up a little bit of the logjam that we had seen potentially coming at that defensive back position. We've got to make a little bit of a roster update here at the 49ers linebacker position. Kalia Davis is not going to be officially on IR yet, so I'm going to put Kalia Davis back over here at the back of the roster. I think they can't put him onto injured reserve until right before the cut down if they want to use one of those two return to play spots for him that now exist this year in the league. So we'll put Kalia Davis back up on the roster. That puts the 49ers at 91. So how did they get under the limit? Well, they released Ezekiel Turner, the linebacker. So I'm doing that in front of your eyes right now. Ezekiel Turner, will take him off of the 49ers 90-man, and I'll talk about that in a second. And we'll move Jalen Graham up. I think that really increases the chances of Jalen Graham making the 49ers 90-man. So 53-man. Why did they release Ezekiel Turner? Well, he was going to be a special teams ace for the 49ers. That's what he was for the Arizona Cardinals. But they also, you can't just have a special teams ace on a crowded roster. The special teams ace has to be able to do something else. So somebody like Chase Lucas, who's a really good gunner for the Lions, unless he can force his way onto the roster at DB, it's really, really hard to see Chase Lucas making the 53. Kind of like how with Ezekiel Turner, it was really hard to see him making the 53 as just a special teamer because the other linebackers on this team had really established themselves and shown promise over the course of this training camp. And that's even with Dre Greenlaw still on PUP. For example, Warner is Warner. We heard Warner talking about Dominic Puni there. But DeAndre Campbell, let me talk about him for a bit and tie this back to Ezekiel Turner. DeAndre Campbell today covered a receiver for a long way. It was Tay Martin, all the way to the sideline and broke up the pass from Brock Purdy, almost intercepted it. He showed impressive speed. This is a 31-year-old veteran, DeAndre Campbell, who the 49ers signed. He's the replacement for Dre Greenlaw. 2 weeks ago, I talked about the wheel route. They ran the Christian McCaffrey, and DeAndre Campbell was step for step with McCaffrey, forcing the incompletion. This is a guy who gave up the highest passer rating out of any linebacker in football on throws into his coverage last year. Campbell wasn't great in coverage last year. But DeAndre Campbell was an all-pro just a couple seasons before that. Which DeAndre Campbell are the 49ers getting? In all likelihood, they're not getting the all-pro version. But I would also say that in all likelihood, they're probably not getting last year's version either. Because it turns out that DeAndre wasn't very happy with the coaching staff in Green Bay. Seems like he's a lot happier here with the 49ers. He also has so many great defenders around him. If you go to the roster here, so many great defenders around him that can help his play become better. You've got Bosa. You got Leonard Floyd. You've got Javon Hargrave. You have Fred Warner. You have Charvarius Ward. See what happens with Talanoa Hufanga, but Jair Brown is starting to come into his own. You got a lot of good players on this defense if you're the 49ers. That can help make somebody like DeAndre Campbell look better than he did with the Packers because he can play faster. There's less responsibility. Maybe he's a little bit healthier and fresher now. I don't know what it is, but I did see him track Christian McCaffrey successfully, and I saw it today with Tate Martin. And if your linebacker is playing better than maybe you even thought that he would, and you already have Warner, and then D. Winters and Jalen Graham have been earning some first-team reps, and they've been popping off. I know there's still a lot of raising of the floor the 49ers have to do with somebody like D. Winters. But if all that's happening and Demetrius Flanagan-Foles is already a trusted agent in that linebacker position, well, there's no room for somebody like Ezekiel Turner, which explains why the 49ers released him today. They needed to have Nick Williams, who I need a shade in turquoise here, the 34-year-old defensive tackle. He's played 400 snaps in 4 of the past 5 years. They needed somebody to replace Kalia Davis, who's hurt and probably going to head on IR with a designation to return at the 53-man roster cut down. So you need to replace the defensive tackle. How do you make room on your roster in the short term? Well, you take off a linebacker who probably is not going to make the team because your other linebackers have been performing so well. What does this mean for Tatum Bethune? I think he's probably a practice squad guy. I think they're going to carry 5 linebackers. That does not include Dre Greenlaw, who will start the season on PUP. But expect the 49ers to carry 5 backers. Yes, expect them to carry Demetrius Flanagan-Foles. And then I think somebody like Tatum Bethune, somebody like Curtis Robinson, who forced a fumble today from Matt Breida, the running back. I think those 2 guys are ideal candidates for the 49ers practice squad. We've got the clip that we're talking about from Charvarius Ward. So Mike cut it up for us. We're going to play it right now. This is going to be good stuff. We're going to go back to that nickelback discussion because I think that the differences between outside and inside cornerback and what both positions require, I think it's really, really important to pay attention to the nuances of those requirements. And Charvarius Ward discussed them very, very eloquently today.
Man, I think he do. That's up for the coach to decide which position he gonna be at, but he didn't look good at both positions. I think he got a real good body to be an outside corner. He got the quickness to be inside corner as well. He feels cool. He can tackle because in our defense, as a nickel, you like another linebacker, so you got to be able to tackle, and you got to be able to cover as well. So I think Ronaldo, he can do it all.
A lot mentally to have to be able to do that as a young player.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, but he's smart. He's smart. He graduated, so I think he'll figure it out for sure. It's gonna take some time. Just being in the NFL, it's a big transition, So nickel, definitely you got to see pullers, the linemen, the quarterback, all of that. At corner is more so you focus on the receivers. So I think he'll figure it out eventually. It'll take some time. They're gonna ease him in though.
So at cornerback, when you're on the outside, you're on an island with the wide receivers. So you're generally facing the best receivers in the game, but that generally, sometimes the best receivers in the game, like Cooper Kupp, line up in the slot. That could be, for Cooper Kupp, it's like 2/3 of the time. It's over 60% of the time. So when you're in the inside, you're a much more immediate guy that they call for run support, right? If you're lined up in the slot, the runs are going to originate from near the quarterback position. You're going to be called upon to make more tackles. And as Charvarius Ward just explained, pulling guards are going to be coming through. So, those guys are much bigger than you as a slot cornerback. You're also dealing with generally quicker receivers because inside receivers are quicker. And it's a tough job on the inside. So whereas you might be focused on the A-list receivers more often on the outside, on only them, that's a tough job in its own right. That slot cornerback position is extremely, extremely difficult for another set of reasons. What the 49ers are doing right now is that they're shuttling Renardo Green back and forth. He's doing what Deommodore Lenoir is doing for the 49ers, and Lenoir has grown into that role. Mooney Ward really encouraged us to recognize it's going to take some time for Renardo Green to get fully comfortable so he can play right away. But we need to look at the 49ers strategy here. And this is like a long-term roster building strategy. If Demo prices himself out from the 49ers, and a lot of that's going to depend on what kind of rate they can get Brandon Aiyuk back at right now, because that's going to have downstream effects. But if Demo prices himself out, then Renardo Green is who they're developing right behind him to be the versatile cornerback in the making. The guy that you just saw on the screen, Charvarius Ward himself, can also potentially price himself out. So you're going to need somebody to fill in for him. I think the 49ers haven't determined what they're going to do yet because a lot of their budget, a lot of what they can do moving forward into the future is going to be determined by the money that Brandon Aiyuk ends up making right now and the money that Brock Purdy is going to be potentially commanding next season. What the 49ers are doing right now is they're arming themselves with option power financially and option power roster-wise by cross-training somebody like Renardo Green on the outside and the inside. We also should hear Diamara Lenore talk about Renardo Green. Let's have a listen.
Oh yeah, he's gonna be nice. I can't wait for him, for everything to slow down for him because he already got the intangibles to be great. He just need more reps. Kind of how I was when I first came. Everything was kind of moving kind of fast, but eventually it'll slow down, and I know he's gonna be a playmaker.
So this is really cool. The 49ers are running this short-term, long-term thing with Renardo Green. And they've got the short-term taken care of because they've got a lot of good players on one-year deals. That guy right there, Diamara Lenore, Charvarius Ward, as I mentioned, Isaac Yiadom. Can't wait for him to come back from his ankle injury. I think that's going to give the 49ers defense a nice shot in the arm. Cool stuff. That was a clip from our shorts that Mike was able to catch up. And obviously, thanks to the 49ers for the press conference stuff. Credit to them, credit to Mike, credit to everybody involved. Roster breakdown continues. I think we've gone through the back seven or the back seven of the defense. Defensive line, we talked a little bit about them. A little bit of Nick Williams. Why don't I play something from practice today that I could probably shoot over to the screen right now? I got to get this from my phone. Yeah, this is Nick Williams working with Chris Kasarik. This is the 49ers' new defensive lineman. And I know that a look at the sleds is always fun, and we can do that right now thanks to what we saw at practice today with Kasarik and Williams. If I could ever retrieve this clip. Sometimes I struggle to find where these clips are, and I think it's still loading. So give it a second. This was fun, though. Williams on the blocking sled with Kasarik for the first time. Here it is.
Tight hand stick, tight hand stick. Get off. Once you lock elbows, get off. As soon as your elbows lock, get off. Tight hand stick, tight hand stick. Get off. Once you lock elbows, get off. As soon as your elbows lock, get off.
So this is all about quickness here. All about quickness for the 49ers. You want to beat the guy next to you on the get off. So you want to pound that sled first. But as soon as the elbows lock, you do not want your hands getting stuck to an offensive lineman. So it's about quickness off the line, off the snap. And it's also about quickness of being able to shed the opposing blocker. Of course, they're hitting a sled, so they're not quite hitting an offensive lineman, but the drill is still useful. So watch that one more time. Chris Kasarik is going to want, obviously, quickness getting over the PVC pipe, but he's also going to want quickness as far as disengaging the arms.
Tight hand stick, tight hand stick, tight hand stick. Get off. Once you lock elbows, get off. As soon as your elbows lock, get off.
So they want tight hands, and then they want quick hands coming down. That's always one of the cooler drills. It's like the heartbeat of 49ers practice when I'm over there in that corner. So there's your look into practice. Yeah, I'm just trying to bring you guys a little bit of everything, including the sandwich of the day. That has to show up on this show. So trust me, we're getting that ready right now. I think I actually already transferred the sandwich of the day to the computer. So I think that we'll be able to get that on in a little bit. It's Fambrini's Palo Alto. I was at Stanford. I'm even going to type that in before we move to the offense here. Why don't we open up the roster? You guys can check that out. I put this into the chat section. Hopefully I remember to put it into the comment section. I have yet to eat dinner. I'm open to dinner recommendations. I'm probably going to have to eat a little bit later than usual because I'm busy doing this live with you guys. We're about to cross 700, which is really fun. But I do have to recommend my food to you guys before we move over to the offense. So here we go. Oh, hell yes, we have this. There it is, the sandwich of the day. It's a chimichurri surf and turf from Fambrini's in Palo Alto. This is one of my favorite spots. Tell them if the owners are there, Nick is the name of one of the owners. If the owners are there, tell them that I sent you, and tell them that you want my order, which is this. I know I've shared this one a lot. It's one of the best sandwiches in the world. If you could be one of the best sandwiches in the Bay Area, you're going to be one of the best in the world. All right, we can move on. 49ers roster breakdown continues. 40 minutes in, 700 of you watching. Time to talk about the offensive line. Maybe another look at Dominic Puni. Let's play this one more time because I thought it was so good from Fred Warner.
Go, Neil! Hey, Roy!
Hey, you know who can move kind of good is the rookie 77, Puni. He can move good, bro. Like they ran bounds or toss over that way, and I'm trying to run past him, and he was hanging with me. I had to punch and get off him. I mean, he got good size to him. He can move. Obviously, he's young, so like he only gonna get stronger.
All right, so let's, those of you who weren't here earlier when we talked about that, let's look to see where Puni is in relation to the rest of the offensive line. As you can see through the first string here, I've moved Puni into that right guard spot. I think he's been in the first team for long enough. Plus, Burford is hurt. Feliciano is hurt with the knee. At this point, we just have to assume that Dominic Puni is going to hold on to this job, given the rave reviews, given the good game tape that we saw from Tennessee. Pencil Dominic Puni in for that right guard spot. Obviously, McKivitz is at right tackle. McKivitz showed a whole lot of emotion today. 49ers offense struggled early, and then they go and they score a touchdown. They pick it up after the first special teams period. There's a fade that's thrown from Brock Purdy to George Kittle for a touchdown in front of Jair Brown. Colton McKivitz was as fired up as I've ever seen him on the field. I mean, he's just yelling. He's raising both of his arms. He's going nuts. I mean, there was some juice there from Colton McKivitz. He was pumped up that the offense turned it around. So much of what happens this year for the 49ers offensively, we could talk about Brandon Aiyuk for as long as we want, but is that line going to block better than it did last year? So we could talk about Trent Williams as long as we want to. I'm assuming he's going to be back and he's going to be Trent Williams. But if that's not the case, we'll have a conversation about it. But I'm worried about the other spots if I'm the 49ers. Can Colton McKivitz be better year 2 starting than year 1 at right tackle? Because he was a below average pass blocker last year. Can Dominic Puni give the 49ers more than what they had last year between Spencer Burford and John Feliciano and pass protection at right guard? If Puni can give the 49ers more at right guard, then I better hear retractions and apologies from people that said the 49ers didn't address the offensive line during the draft. They literally have a guy that's on track to start on the offensive line out of this draft. I would say that they addressed it. There's been so much bad reporting and so many overreactions about what the 49ers have actually done. People just are not objective. They're not unbiased. But Dominic Puni is on track to start. And if he's on track to start and give the 49ers an upgrade at right guard, then yes, I would say they address the offensive line over the course of this draft and over the course of this offseason. So the question is, McKivitz, does he get better just by virtue of being there for the second year as a starter? And does Dominic Puni and the potential improvement that he brings at right guard, does that help McKivitz improve? It is all connected up front, which is why my biggest concern for this offensive line right now might be at the center position. I saw a couple low snaps from Jake Brendel today. I've seen low snaps from Jake Brendel not only throughout the course of this training camp, but this goes back to last year. Low snaps cannot happen. The center has to get the ball cleanly at hip level to the quarterback for the timing of the system to not hit hiccups. So low snaps from Jake Brendel have definitely concerned me over the course of camp. And the knee tendonitis concerns me too. He's not practicing every single day for the 49ers. They're load managing him. And as we know, center is a position that calls out the protections for the 49ers. It's extremely important in the larger scale of things. So Jake Brendel, I mean, he's got to come through for the 49ers this year. And if he doesn't, well, then you wonder about Feliciano because of the knee issue. And then you start talking about Nick Zakelj, who I talked about at the top of the show. Can this be the season that Nick Zakelj takes over at center? He's seen first team snaps there. He excelled at Fordham after they developed him. He excelled in high school after they developed him. The 49ers have had 2 seasons to develop Nick Zakelj. They finally going to be able to yield the fruits of their labor? Stay tuned, because this is going to be really, really interesting stuff up front. I think the offensive line is fascinating. George Kittle pointed out today that it's been good to work with Jalen Moore, because he said that working with Trent Williams on combo blocks is essentially a cheat code. Trent, it's just easy to block with Trent because he destroys everybody. Kittle has actually said that he's been able to sharpen his game more working with obviously worse offensive linemen. I don't think it's an insult to Jalen Moore to tell him that he's not as good as one of the best players of all time in Trent Williams. But he's gotten to work with Jalen Moore instead, and it's forced George Kittle to really iron out some of the deficiencies in his game as far as the combo blocking go. George Kittle also told us that we need to have nicer shoes. I don't know if he was referring to me specifically, but the first thing I did after practice today was go to Nordstrom. I swear. I got some nice shoes at Nordstrom. Do I have them here? Maybe I could show them off. Give me 1 second. I'll let you guys give me a little bit of a review on my shoes. I'll be back in literally 10 seconds. All right, I'm here. Hopefully we didn't lose too much of an audience. I got the shoes that I purchased to make George happy. If you want to take a screenshot of this, or send him the video, tag him. I know that he checks social media. Let me straighten this out first. And we're going to have the grand reveal. We got some Cole Haans at Nordstrom. They're white. They're clean. And it was George Kittle today that was talking about the media not having a good shoe game. I personally was wearing some old tennis shoes because the first couple of weeks of camp, it's just hot. You're just trying to get through it. I was going to wear something that was already broken in. I agree. I'll wear my loafers during the season. I'll wear my cowboy boots, as you guys know. So it was time to up the shoe game. I'm not going to wear cowboy boots during training camp because I'm going to be wearing shorts. I'm not doing shorts with cowboy boots, but the Cole Haans here, we'll go with them. Brand new shoes, haven't been worn yet, fresh out of the box. There you go. What do you guys think? As we're talking about tight ends, I had to address the shoes. Bay Area Chris has a question about Kittle. Has Kittle looked good? I feel we haven't heard much about Kittle this offseason. No, I mean, he was the first guy I wrote about at the start of training camp. He lost 30 or 40 pounds because he had the core muscle surgery, and he put all that weight back on. He looks healthy. He looks fresh. I think Kittle looks really good. Practice on Monday, Kittle got targeted 8 times. This could be a heavy receiving load for Kittle this year. I mean, he was over 1,000 yards last year, but yeah, it's good stuff. The shoes are good to go, and I will be wearing them out to practice tomorrow. Let me reopen this roster. Kittle's looked really, really good during camp. I think a healthy Kittle is one of the best players in football. As we saw last year, even a Kittle that's hurt is a damn good player. He was playing hurt throughout the back half of the season, still finished with 1,000 yards receiving. The tight end room, I've mentioned this a lot. I think there's a spot up for grabs there. They have consistently carried 4 on their 53-man roster. So can they carry 4 again? Right now, I've got 3 pencil-ins. I've got Kittle. You could put him in Sharpie. Saubert, you could put him in Sharpie. Nice pancake against Tennessee. Braden Willis, he's had a nice offseason. You could put him in Sharpie. What's it going to be past that? Cam Latu, Jake Tonjes, Mason Pline. Stay tuned. 49ers Saints on Sunday. How about the receiver room? We can go back through the Brandon Aiyuk timeline really fast because I think that there's a lot of new viewers, right? So we've got Aiyuk discussed on here, but that's the Athletic article. I want to talk about the timeline first as we talk about the receivers. Let's put this up on the screen, though. The Brandon Aiyuk timeline. We saw him at practice today, out on the field for the first time in 2 weeks. Handshake hug day was on July 31st. Today was August 14th. In between those two dates, Brandon Aiyuk peeked his head out of the weight room once. So on the 31st, which was 2 Wednesdays ago, he was on the field hugging Shanahan, shaking Lynch's hand. Today, Lynch gave him a little hello, pat on the back 2 weeks later. In between then, he hadn't been on the field. We can all theorize and speculate as to why he hadn't been on the field, but that was during the brunt of the trade discussions. Mike Silver also reported that Kyle Shanahan wasn't thrilled with Brandon Aiyuk being around the facility and the hold-in. He didn't like the theatrical nature of the hold-in. That's what Silver implied. I'm just saying that maybe the handshake and hug in front of all the cameras wasn't all too appreciated by Kyle Shanahan. I don't know if that's true or not. That's because Mike didn't specifically mention that, but based on his other reporting, it seemed like that could have been a point of contention. It could have been something where, okay, John Lynch said, Brandon, why don't you stay off the field until this is resolved or until this starts moving into a better direction? So maybe if that was a message from John Lynch to Brandon Aiyuk, maybe the fact that it does seem to have been moving in a better direction. I can report that the 49ers increased their guaranteed money offer to Brandon Aiyuk. And if they think that they're getting closer and closer to signing a contract, maybe they said, okay, come back out onto the field. I don't know. I do know about the guaranteed money. I don't know about Aiyuk being on the field or not being on the field. This is what I do know. I do know that this is the timeline. And, you know, I do like to stay away from speculation as much as humanly possible. I know it's not fully possible in a situation like this. But 2 weeks ago, we saw what we did. Then there was a laughable couple-day period when people were falsely reporting that Aiyuk was re-signing. Then there were verified reports that San Francisco was actually open to a trade that supposedly had been going on even longer than that. Then Aiyuk rejected proposals from the Patriots and the Browns, even though the 49ers, I think, probably would have happily taken a 2 and a 5 and Amari Cooper from Cleveland. But Aiyuk didn't want to negotiate a long-term contract extension with those two teams for reasons that are easy to understand from his perspective. Then there was the report of a slight reapproachment 5 days ago. That was when we had our subscriber meetup in Nashville. That went really well. Then Jerry Rice said that we'll find out today what's going to happen. Jerry still has about 3.5 hours to be right, but it's increasingly looking like we won't find out today. And, you know, as far as today, well, we found out that Brandon Aiyuk is back on the 49ers practice field. The reason I bring this back is because a lot of you kind of passed through and weren't watching at the start, but are watching now. And naturally, we hit the receiver position in our roster breakdown. That's where we're at receiver. Debo is looking great. Jawan Jennings is looking great. Ricky Pearsall's still hurt. Chris Conley is looking great. Jacob Cowing, he's fast. They ran a jet sweep to him the other day that I thought was interesting. They got Robbie Chosen out there. Danny Gray out of the blue non-contact. Tay Martin got covered by DeAndre Campbell today. That's all I can tell you about the receivers. We need to watch a little bit more during this preseason game against the New Orleans Saints. Look at all the injuries at running back. McCaffrey, Mitchell, Garendo, Taylor. Breida fumbled today. Curtis Robinson forced it. Schrader's been getting a lot of action. He caught a touchdown pass today from Brock Purdy when the 49ers offense was heating up. Jordan Mason looks great. You guys all watched the preseason game. Kyle Juszczyk looks great. He's an indispensable part of the offense. And that means that I could take Brandon Aiyuk timeline off the screen. It's an Aiyuk timeline and a 49ers roster breakdown. That means we could talk about the final position, quarterback. Purdy. Purdy's Purdy. He's buff. Today, he struggled to begin. Then he turned it on. A lot of it is they need Trent back. And Brandon Aiyuk will help pass protection too, if and when he does come back, because separation helps a quarterback get rid of the ball more quickly. It's not like today's first period of practice where the 49ers really struggled. It's offensively. It's not like that's been a recurring thing. They've had portions where the defense has won, and obviously there've been dominant periods for the offense as well. But this is what I wrote in the article that's up in The Athletic, and this is going to really pertain to Brock Purdy. Anytime that the offense is going to goes through some struggles at practice, and two of its top players are missing, your mind is automatically going to gravitate toward that those two players are missing, especially if one of them, the one that's pictured up on the screen right now, the article about whom is in the description, especially if one of them is literally at practice watching from the sideline. So you wonder how Brandon Aiyuk and how Trent Williams might be able to help during some of the stretches of struggle for the 49ers offense. The trick play that went bad today, Javon Hargrave and Nick Bosa were in the backfield very quickly. So Juwan Jennings, like in a panic, pitched it over Brock Purdy's head and it rolled backwards. Not good. It would have been on a blooper reel. I think Trent Williams being around helps that because Nick Bosa is probably less likely to get into the backfield if Trent's there. So priority, get Trent Williams back if you're the 49ers. There was also there was a play where Purdy stepped up and he threw high to Jordan Mason. He had to step up because there was pressure. Trent could probably help that. But what people need to realize is that like Ricky Pearsall, when they drafted him to add to the dynamic of the receiving room, that indirectly is a pass protection thing as well, because they struggled to beat man coverage in the Super Bowl. That was even with Brandon Aiyuk. If you can't beat man coverage, the quarterback can't get rid of the football, the blockers have to hold for longer, and the pass protection obviously looks worse. If you can beat man coverage quickly, the quarterback can get the ball out of his hand more quickly, and all of a sudden the pass protection looks better. So that's where Brandon Aiyuk can help. And, it's a general thing too. It's an energy thing. It's a totality of the pieces thing for the 49ers, but he can help the quarterbacks. I think the most likely roster scenario for the 49ers, the quarterback position, is Dobbs as QB2 on the 53, Brandon Allen on the practice squad. Remember, the rules are different this year. Emergency third quarterback can come from the practice squad. All right, it's dinner time for me. It's 8:41, so I got to get some food before it's too late here. I want to get some quality food. Burritos are open late. I did have this for lunch, and this was really good. So I'm not going to have something this heavy, this big again. Fambrini's in Palo Alto is the sandwich of the day. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. I had fun talking for an hour. We'll talk to everybody soon.